So I will remind you on December 5th, and there'll be an email, but just wanted to give you a heads up. So mark your calendars, December 11th. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. A reminder, there will not be a lunch meeting next week here for celebration of the holiday, Thanksgiving. Sign-up sheets should be on your tables for the Salvation Bell Ringing Day, November 30th. Any other pop-ups? Whoa, okay.
Hi, just to remind all of you that this Saturday we have the bubbles and bourbon brunch for the women of Rotary. So whoever that is interested in participating at that, please just reach out to me. I send text messages, and you guys should also have received emails about it. It will be at Mr. Alfred's house, Mr. Alfred Aviles, and I know he's making a delicious bourbon cocktail. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Any other pop-ups? No, that's, I think we did more today already than we did my whole year when I was president. Like to call up Ike, Sherlock, and Jennifer, and Connor and Hazen for a presentation. Ike and I have been friends in business and in Rotary for probably 20 years. And I was so delighted when he asked me to participate in this Paul Harris presentation now. Connor and Hazen, the Paul Harris Fellow recognition is a proud tradition that pays tribute to the memory of our founder, Paul Harris. In order to be honored as a Paul Harris Fellow, someone must contribute at least $1,000 to our foundation's annual fund, polio eradication, or an approved foundation grant. These funds can be used to honor others while being applied to the amazing work that has distinguished our Rotary Foundation as an organization that provides health, hope, and peace throughout the world. The Rotary Foundation has spent more than $4 billion on life-changing projects since its founding about 100 years ago. Paul Harris Fellow recognition has decorated presidents, philanthropists, heads of state, entrepreneurs, industrialists, teachers, students, business professionals, and fellow Rotarians. Ike, if you'll do the honor of the pens, I'm pleased to recognize Connor and Hazen Sherlock, who have inspired the respect and endorsement of their parents, dedicated supporters of our Rotary Foundation. Please join me in a round of applause for Rotary's newest Paul Harris Fellows, Connor and Hazen Sherlock. Thank you, Ike. And Ike, Jennifer, thank you for your generous support to the Rotary Foundation. To acknowledge their support to the foundation, I would like to present Jennifer and Ike with their major donor pins and their crystal recognition pin, which I don't see that, but thank you, Ike. Jay Hinderlike, family of Rotary.
All right, fellow Rotarians, please join me in recognizing the following Rotarians who have birthdays either this week or for the end of the month. I've got November 24th, Katie Quackenbush. Happy birthday. Scott Hannigan, November 28th. Stephen Rowland, November 29th. And then November 30th, we have four: Michael Corrigan Jr., Jimmy Kelly, Justin Merritt, and Will Tesh. Happy birthday to all. Any family Rotary from the floor? All right, that concludes my report. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you, Jay. William Milne to introduce guest.
Thank you, Ken. Well, Ike Sherlock, you have blessed us today with many guests. Will you please introduce them all?
First guest, visiting Rotarian Michael Hannigan, March Rotary. He's from Capital One back. Helped, I think it was in my life. Tanner Lee's back, one of the top industrial real estate guys in town, and official member for us. Of course, you've already seen and know all that kind of from myself.
Great, thank you. Well, Ken Baker.
Thank you, William. I'd like to introduce my wife, Fran, and and wonderful son-in-law, Mitch Nichols. Mitch.
Okay. And we have two guests from Riverside High School.
We have the principal, Mr. Crystal,
Mhm.
and our interactive sponsor, Mr. Alberto Tagliari.
Welcome. And Jeff Collins as a guest.
This is my guest, my daughter, Kathy Collins. She is a graduate of the University of Florida. Has been in Nashville, and she'll be coming back to Jacksonville within about 3 or 4 months.
Great.
Share this special day.
Welcome. Okay. Doug, will you please introduce your guests?
I'm pleased to introduce my daughter, Mary Susan Kay, and the two brains, and the only two brains in our law firm, Marie Wells and Rhonda Martin. And is Connie Mitchner, who's a wonderful friend of our law firm.
All right, great. And Jeff Witt from the Jacksonville Downtown Club, you're here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you, William. Before William introduces our speaker today, Doug, I think you can see how many people are here today to listen that are visiting with us for the first time. I know Fran and Mitch wanted to hear your presentation. So without further ado, William.
May 17th, 1943, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was in the middle of his 10th year, guiding us through the Second World War, coming out of the Great Depression and going into hopeful and potential American economic prosperity. The Memphis Belle completed its 25 mission tour, and the crew of the B-17 Memphis Belle became the first air crew of the U.S. English Air Force to complete their 25 mission tour. In Jacksonville, Florida, John T. Alsop was serving his 16th year as mayor of Jacksonville, Florida. And for just a fun little piece of trivia, what we know as the Main Street was named in his honor, and he still holds the record for the longest possible term. About 2,600 miles away in the small town of Atascadero, California, which currently today has a population of about 29,700 people or so, a young man was born who would grow up to be a hero to us all, to be perhaps the finest father, grandfather, humanitarian, Rotarian, and just all around wonderful servant to fellow man. in that town. Since 1946, Doug Milne has been, without a doubt, a true Jacksonvillian servant. Growing up in historic Avondale to Doug and Betty Milne, he attended Fishware Elementary, John Gorey, West Riverside, and Lee High School, now Riverside High School, where he, to this day, nurtures and holds dear the friendships that he made. After his receiving his bachelor's degree from the University of the South in 1965, and ultimately his law degree from the University of Florida in 1968, Jacksonville has been his home ever since, and what a home he has made it for himself and for all. Actively involved with over 17 civic organizations as either the president or a trustee or just in some form of aid, and earning 15 prestigious honors over the course of his life, he is the embodiment of a good citizen, a model philanthropist, and a true servant Rotarian. In full truth, he does this not for the accolades, but out of true, genuine love and care for all the people that he knows and those he doesn't know, as long as it is to their benefit. And it is not without a sense of providence that he was not appointed to the mayor in 1987, because I believe that would have actually held him back from putting his best use to serving and taking care of as many people as he could, which is what he truly loves to do. Doug Milne is the finest hero that I could ever hope for, and I am blessed to know many. Through all of his involvement, all of his accomplishments, and all of his activities, he never lost sight of coaching the Little League teams of me and my siblings, quite often in his button down and tie. He always made the extra time to make sure we were taken care of, and he always puts others first. So just today, as we are here to hear him celebrate America, today I celebrate him. I never ever stop learning from him, and he never ceases to amaze me with his love, his heart, and his charity, his giving, and his true service above self character. Please join me in welcoming Doug Milne.
Good afternoon again. It's such a pleasure to be here. I have told you all every year, standing up here, that I'm the luckiest guy in the world to be able to look out. You all can't do it. There's only one set of eyes up here, and to see some of the most wonderful people in all of Jacksonville that I have the good fortune to know and to deal with. This is a wonderful Rotary Club. Rotary is wonderful. And we're all as blessed as we can possibly be to be members of this fine club. There's no limit to what good this club and its members can do for our community, which we've proven year after year after year. Several days ago, my wife asked me how many times I've delivered this talk. I don't have any idea, but it's a lot. But I did figure out that I've been giving this particular talk that I created for this club for just about half my life. And that sort of hit me with a shock. She said, "How much longer do you plan to do it?" And I said, "Well, number one, if I keep getting asked, I'll keep on doing it." But I said, every time I've given the talk, which is a lot of times, I always have a feeling afterwards that people feel just a little bit better about themselves and about the country. And I told her that if and when that feeling ever ends, then it will be time for me to hang it up and go off and do other things. I hope that time doesn't come soon. I have a great nephew who lives in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And he, several weeks ago, was given a high school award by the Jackson Hole, Wyoming Rotary Club. And his mother, my niece, sent me a copy of the acceptance speech that he gave when he got this fine award from the Jackson Hole Club. And in that speech, he said, "I have a great uncle who lives in Jacksonville, Florida. who's a Rotarian, a longtime Rotarian. And that great uncle often says that if everybody paid attention to and just tried to live by the four-way test, what a wonderful world we would have. And he included that in his gratefulness talk receiving that award. We had a wonderful man in this club many years ago who was a member for many years. His name was Earl Cooper. He was the longtime minister of Riverside Baptist Church at Park and King. And every year, Dr. Cooper would deliver us a wonderful message about Thanksgiving. And then he died. Bob Shercliffe, whom many of you remember and knew well, was the program chairman of our club that year. And he called me in March and asked me if I would agree to write and deliver a talk about American Thanksgiving in place of Dr. Cooper. I told him that I would for two particular reasons. Number one is, if you knew Bob Shercliffe, you know that he was just not the kind of guy that you ever wanted to not do what he asked you to do. And number two, it was only March, and I had until November to work on it. So I did. And I figured after giving the talk that day that that would be the end of that, and I'd start out working on other things. We were meeting out at the motel on Commonwealth in those days, and it just didn't work out that way. People were making up at our club that day from other Rotary clubs. Several ministers were there, school teachers, and lots of them came up afterwards and asked if I would re-give the talk at their club or their church or wherever they were from in subsequent years. And it has just sort of developed a life of its own. But I'm the real beneficiary because I get the opportunity to do what I'm doing right now, look out at these smiling, fresh, wonderful, energetic faces that each of you all carry on yourselves. And that's true all over in Rotary. Rotary is a wonderful, spirited organization we all need to take advantage of. At that time, those half of my life years ago, when I put together and delivered this talk, my father was still alive. Many of you knew him, remember him. He grew up during the Depression in the Pacific Northwest and loved every minute of his life in this land. I tried to mold this talk through his eyes, a man with a boundless zest for life, its challenges, and a keen sense of fair play. Great it is to dream the dream as we stand in youth by the starry stream. But greater it is, excuse me, to fight life through and then to be able to say at the end, you know, that dream is true. He reached high, he dreamed deep. Those dreams became goals and then became achievements. A wonderful role model for my sister Mary and my brother Jack and me and William and all the other grandchildren and nieces and nephews and everyone who ever came in contact with him. This message is today, just as it was those many years ago when first delivered, dedicated to the earlier Doug Milne. This land is your land. This land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land, America, was made for you and was made for me. Thus rhyme Woody Guthrie's lyrics of the America 1940s and well beyond. And the same spirit of love and devotion, pride and thanksgiving has been in the hearts of all Americans for all our centuries. Around the turn of the last century, a young, tired, lonely Scotsman landed at Ellis Island embarking on his own adventure in this great new land of unmatched opportunity. He was a plumber by trade and would make his way from New York to San Francisco after hearing about the great earthquake and subsequent fire there, looking for work. Then moving north into the Oregon wilderness, he sent back to Scotland for his future intended, whom he'd not seen in nearly 5 years. Excuse me, inviting her to come to America so they could build their lives together here, and that they did. And for that, they were ever thankful. Long even before the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth Rock, this land made for you and for me was the object of dreams, of mystery, and of challenge. In the early 1500s, Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon landed just south of what we now know as Jacksonville Beach, laying claim of the entire country for Spain. Not many years later, French Huguenots searching for religious freedom landed at the mouth of what they called the River May to establish the first significant settlement from foreign lands anywhere in North America. Today, what those Frenchmen called River May, we call River St. John's. For thousands of years, the words of a Hebrew psalmist had been read and had been believed. Praise the Lord, for it's a good thing to sing praises unto our God. Yes, a joyful and pleasant thing it is to be thankful. We'll picture those struggling, freedom-seeking French men and women discovering the beauty of the very same land you and I live in and love today. My guess is those people gave thanks, just as the Hebrew had done thousands of years before. Our nation, as international observers often point out, even though still young compared to so many other countries in the world, is every bit that world's benchmark. Did the Pilgrims foresee this? Did those amazing men, women, and children who endured those dread winters, hunger and pain, sickness and death, have any idea this would become the greatest nation ever known in the entire history of man? Well, I believe they did know. I believe the Plymouth colonists knew after surviving those severe conditions and then seeing corn break through the fertile soil like other crops and like their hope. As breath is to the body, hope is to the spirit. They knew as they established their farms, built their towns and businesses, churches and schools. They all knew, and they stopped. They took a day they called Thanksgiving, to rejoice and plain old-fashioned give thanks. Whether they were Puritans, Catholics, Quakers, Huguenots, Jews, Protestants, they all knew, like Americans have continued to know for over 350 years. America means Thanksgiving. It means freedom. It means love and devotion, family and gratitude. It means courage and principles and the will to fight to protect those things we so deeply cherish and, yes, often to even die for them. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee we sing. As the years go by, the love and thanksgiving for this great new land grew stronger and stronger. 13 colonies, Massachusetts to Georgia, rice, indigo, tobacco, livestock, corn, wheat, and timber, taxation without representation, and restrictions against that which Americans have always craved the very most, their freedom. The Boston Tea Party, Paul Revere and Betsy Ross, the Revolutionary War, including the Battle of Thomas's Creek, now the dividing line between Florida counties, Nassau and Duval. July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence provides that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with rights to life, rights to liberty, and rights to the pursuit of happiness. Almost 200 years later, then President John F. Kennedy, when conferring in a room in the White House with a substantial group of his brightest counselors, remarked to those present, "You know, there has not been such a concentration of brain power in this room since Thomas Jefferson dined here all by himself." Jefferson, who may not agree with what you had to say, would defend to the death your very right to say it. George Washington, the father of our country, the snow was red with blood. Their faith was worn at Valley Forge. Their faith was brotherhood. Now, wasn't that a time to try the very soul of man? Benjamin Franklin in the Continental Congress. Franklin, considered our first great literary figure and one of the foremost scientists of his age, whom universities and learned societies on both sides of the Atlantic delighted to honor, had only 2 years of formal schooling. He became our most skillful diplomat, helped draft that Declaration of Independence, and secured the support of France for our newly formed republic. All his life, Benjamin Franklin believed that there's one God who made all things, that he governs the world by his providence, that he ought to be worshiped by adoration, by prayer, and by thanksgiving. But, said Franklin, the most acceptable service to God is doing good to your fellow man. Franklin told the Continental Convention, "I believe that providence guides the affairs of men, and never a sparrow falls to the ground that God does not attend his funeral, and that all the hairs on our heads are numbered. I don't believe," said Franklin, "an empire or a republic can be launched without God's help. And I move you, Mr. President, that this convention open with prayer, and that we petition divine guidance and help in the step we're about to take." America adopts its Constitution in 1787, creating a flexible government system that continues in its basic form to the present day. In fact, of all constitutions in existence at the time ours was adopted, those well now over 230 years, only the American Constitution still survives. When the people fear their government, there's tyranny. When the government fears the people, there's liberty. Thomas Jefferson. Years go quickly by, and our nation continues to grow, and it grows under God, and it grows indivisible, and it grows with liberty and justice for all. New York, Boston, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh, great American cities, and that star-spangled banner so proudly she'd wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave. Savannah, Charleston, and New Orleans, Chicago, St. Louis, and Cleveland, big cities with big hearts and with big dreams. Strong-willed and courageous men and women attracted by vast farmland and by minerals and forest resources move over the Appalachians well beyond our young country's western boundary to build new lives and raise families in unsettled wilderness, just as earlier Americans had done eastward. The Native American, Apache, Seminole, Cherokee, the Timucua, and so many, many more. The California Gold Rush and the Western Saga, where they sleep out every night and the only law is right. Cowboys, those strange men who invented lonesome, sing out with throats burned dry. All day I faced the barren waste without a taste of water, but with the same sturdy spirit and hope that has always typified Americans. They press on, and way up there, he'll hear our prayer and show us where there's water. Land grants and homesteads, Oklahoma and the Great Plains, where overeager settlers rush to make claims before they're allowed to, and hence are given the name Sooners. Lewis and Clark spend the winter where the Oregon Trail ends in a small Oregon town on the Columbia River called the Dalles, to be followed by thousands migrating overland into that wonderful part of our majestic country. Many Europeans would follow Lewis and Clark and find their way into this frontier land, including that aforementioned pioneer from Scotland. Railroads and the steamboat, the cotton gin, telegraph, steel plow and reaper, faster printing presses and regular newspapers, lithography, Nathaniel Currier and James Merritt Ives depicting early American scenes, customs, and events, including one called Thanksgiving. Time to remember and time to give thanks for this wonderful new land of unmatched opportunity. God, our Maker, does provide for our wants to be supplied. Come, ye thankful people, come and raise the song of harvest home. The most tragic chapter and heaviest pain of our not unflawed American history find Americans battling Americans. Brother against brother, friends become enemies. The Civil War, with more American lives lost than all our other wars put together. Much of the former Confederacy is left in ruins, with a long and deep-seated bitterness and division between Americans of the North and Americans of the South. But it's been said that a sense of providence is a trust of tomorrow, drawn from the power of all our yesterdays. To love where you've been is a ready embrace of where you have yet to go. That was clear to Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln, who also said, I can see how it might be possible for a man to look down upon the earth and be an atheist, but I cannot conceive how he could look up into the heavens and say there is no God. The Industrial Revolution, American railroads expand to provide a means for the distribution of goods. American ingenuity, American inventions respond to public needs, and American businessmen and businesswomen produce those products. Investors and bankers, capital for expansion, coal mining, oil, and railroad manufacturers and sellers, steel, machinery, and clothing, all produced in enormous quantity. America's great cities grow greater. Huge fortunes are amassed from the business boom, leaving some still living in poverty. Big business rises as millions move from farm to city. The American telephone, the American airplane, the American phonograph, American automobiles in mass production and in any color under the sun you wanted, just so that color was black. Ransom Eli Olds and Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, the Wright brothers, and Alexander Graham Bell. America's rich natural resources, abundant water supply to power machinery, lumber for construction, and products from our vast forest lands, coal and iron from the ground, producing steel to build those machines, railroad tracks, cars, and bridges, copper, silver, petroleum, labor unions, and social reform. That Scotsman who settled in Oregon arrived only about 40 years after completion of the world's first transcontinental railroad system, linking our vast country by rail from east to west. With the railroad came economic growth, shipping, and transporting people. Cornelius Vanderbilt and Jay Gould, early merchants, including R.H. Macy and Marshall Field. Right or wrong, the customer is always right. And John Wanamaker, when that customer comes into my store, you forget about me. That customer is king. New mail order companies begun by men named Montgomery Ward and Richard Sears. Strong political machines are developed by Democrat and Republican parties. Military strength increases, and America now finds itself a world power, an international leader. The gay 90s, American football, American baseball, and American basketball have all begun. Teddy Roosevelt, this country will not be a good place for anyone to live until the time comes that it's a reasonably good place for everyone to live. America tries to stay out of war, but after too many German acts of aggression, including sinking ships, we declare war on Germany in 1917. Doughboys and Liberty Bonds, Allied victory in 1918, armistice and memorial. The Roaring 20s. For the first time, most Americans now live in cities. Lindbergh crosses the Atlantic and the Constitution is amended, allowing women the right to vote. Prohibition, radio and movies, the Charleston, Wilson, Harding, Coolidge and Hoover, margin buying, stock market crash, depression. Red Grange, Jack Dempsey, Joe Louis, Bobby Jones, and the immortal Babe Ruth. FDR and the New Deal, the CCC, the WPA and Farm Credit Administration, German troops overrun Poland, and much of Europe unites in war against Germany. We stay out until December 7th, 1941, when Japan bombs Pearl Harbor. And we declare war on Germany, Japan, and Italy. That war lasts 4 long and bitter years, and that Scotsman's 3 sons would all serve: Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Truman and Eisenhower, American might and endurance, men, women, and children, black and white, preserving world freedom and peace. Many would go when called, many would never come back. The greatest of sacrifices for this land where our fathers died, this land of the Pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Russia and China spread the threat of communism, the Korean War. One day, his minister called on the little Scots, Oregon plumber whose son had been missing in action in Korea and was presumed dead. After paying his respects on the Scottish plumber, the minister left and walked back out onto the sidewalk, and the phone rang, and the Scotsman answered to learn that his son had been found and that he was alive and he was well. Frantically, the Scotsman raced out into the street and caught up with his minister and pushed on him all the cash from his pockets and all the cash from his cash register in the store. American Thanksgiving. Kennedy's 1,000 days. Ask not what your country can do for you. You ask what you can do for your country. Johnson, Nixon, and Ford. Vietnam and the Civil Rights Movement. Rosa Parks. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I have a dream that one day the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. Space travel, satellites, Americans on the moon, computers and spreading drives for human equality, colleges and universities, 747s and L-1011s, World Series, Super Bowls, Disney World, You've Got Mail, and Zoom meetings. American scientific breakthrough and medical life-saving technology. Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, and Trump again. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters, America, this land made for you and for me, is a nation which throughout its history has faced and aggressively overcome turmoil, strife, and struggle of a magnitude unlike the rest of the world, and it's going to continue to do so. America, from Wall Street to Bourbon Street, to Hollywood and Vine, from the Broward Bridge at Dane Point to the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, Alaska to Florida, Maine to Hawaii, with strong resilience, faith-based ingenuity, patriotism, reliance on our spiritual and moral fiber, and our great American humanitarian creed. We are the symbol of mankind's hope for the future. Just as those going before us, including that little Scotsman who was my grandfather, William's great-grandfather, Mary Susan's great-grandfather, and who loved his adoptive country, next Thursday we stop. We raise the song of Harvest Home, and we give thanks for all the blessings of this great land where our fathers died, this land of the Pilgrim's pride. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Happy Thanksgiving.
Doug, thank you so much. It gets better every year. Oh, Tim, I didn't see you. Please, Raffy. It's a good thing you weren't here earlier. We're no meeting next week, Thanksgiving week. On December the 4th, we have Sean Mulholland, chairman of the Emerald Trail Project, which our club is supported very well, one of the top giving clubs to that in Jacksonville. December 11th is the Christmas party, no luncheon meeting. And then we're off for a few weeks for the holidays. Robert Pavelka, would you lead us in the four-way test? Please rise.
Four-way test of the things you say and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Fifth, is it fun?
Thank you, Doug. Thank you again. It's just wonderful. It gets better every year. Tim, let me let you wrap it up. You're good?
I'll ring the bell. Thanks, buddy. I got
No, we hit the count of 1, 2.
Sorry about that.
Yes. Instead of total strength, thank you. Reframe from our goal. That's what I. Sorry. Thank you. Here.